You won't believe what my dog found in my backyard. At first, I thought it was just another hole he was digging for fun. But then, he pulled out something buried deep in the dirt. A small, weathered envelope, covered in dust. My heart stopped when I read the date. 50 years ago. And the words inside? They changed everything. I never expected a casual afternoon in my backyard to turn into a journey into the past. But when my dog unearthed that old letter, I knew I was holding something important. Something meant to be delivered decades ago, but never was. What was inside? Who wrote it? And why had it been buried instead of sent? I had no idea that opening it would uncover a chilling secret. It all started with my dog, Max, a friendly, playful golden retriever who had always been full of energy. If you have a dog, you know what I mean. Those boundless bursts of excitement, the way they suddenly decide that digging a hole in your perfectly manicured lawn is the most important thing in the world. That was Max. Except that day, something was different. It was a quiet afternoon, just like any other. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over my backyard. I was sipping my coffee, half watching Max as he did his usual rounds, sniffing around, chasing leaves, the kind of simple joys that make a dog's world feel so content. But then I noticed it. He had stopped, not the kind of stop where he spots a squirrel or hears a distant noise. This was different. His ears were perked, his entire body stiffened, tail frozen in place. He was staring at a patch of dirt near the old oak tree at the edge of the yard. His nose twitched rapidly, as if he had caught a scent, one that didn't belong there. Then, without warning, he started digging, not the playful, careless digging he usually did. No, this was frantic, desperate. His paws hit the dirt with force, sending clumps flying. He was focused, driven, like he had a mission. At first I laughed. "Max, what are you up to now?" I called out, shaking my head, but he didn't respond, didn't even glance up. That's when the first chill ran down my spine. I put my coffee down and walked over. "Hey, buddy, what's got you so worked up?" He ignored me. He just kept going, paws tearing deeper into the ground, his breathing quick, almost excited. I knelt beside him, brushing away the dirt he had loosened, and that's when I saw it, something sticking out from beneath the soil. A corner of paper? My heart skipped a beat. It was old, so old that even the slightest touch made it crumble at the edges. I hesitated, staring at it. For a moment, my mind raced through the possibilities. Could it be just trash? Some forgotten newspaper? Maybe a receipt from years ago? But as I carefully uncovered more, my stomach twisted. It wasn't just paper. It was an envelope, a real stamped envelope. The ink was faded, the corners worn, but the postmark was still there. I leaned in, squinting to make out the date. My breath caught in my throat. 1975. I blinked. Surely, I was seeing things. I rubbed the dirt away a little more, revealing a name scrawled in cursive on the front. It wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone I recognized. A letter that had been buried for 50 years. A strange sense of unease crept over me. This wasn't something someone had simply dropped or forgotten. No, this had been deliberately hidden, placed in the ground, and left there for decades. Max whined beside me, nudging the envelope with his nose. I swallowed hard. Should I open it? A part of me hesitated. This wasn't mine. It was someone else's words, someone else's secrets. It felt wrong, like intruding on a moment I was never meant to witness. But then, another thought crept in. Why was it buried? Why had it never been sent? And more importantly, who had written it? I took a deep breath, fingers trembling as I gently lifted the fragile paper. The envelope was sealed, but barely. Time had weakened the glue, making it easy to pry open. I slipped my fingers inside, carefully pulling out the letter within. The paper was thin, delicate. The handwriting was elegant but hurried, as if written in a rush. I tilted it toward the sunlight, my heart pounding against my ribs as I began to read. "My dearest love." A love letter? I exhaled, relieved for a moment. Maybe this wasn't anything sinister. Maybe it was just some old, forgotten note between two people from long ago. But then, I don't know if this letter will ever reach you, but I have to write it anyway. They're watching me. They know what we did. I'm scared. If anything happens to me, know that I never stopped loving you. And please, don't trust him. You know who I mean. Whatever you do, don't let him find you. I stopped reading. My hands shook. The backyard, the warm sunlight, the birds chirping in the distance. Everything suddenly felt wrong. This wasn't just a love letter. It was a warning. I swallowed the lump in my throat and read it again, my mind racing. They're watching me. They know what we did. I'm scared. I looked around, as if expecting someone, something, to be there, lurking, listening. Who wrote this? Who was it meant for? And what happened to them? I turned the paper over, searching for more. A signature, a clue, anything. But there was nothing, just those haunting words. I looked back at the envelope, flipping it over again. The name written on it. I didn't recognize it, but something about it made my skin prickle, like it belonged to a different time, a different story. I stood up, scanning my backyard as if the answers would suddenly appear. Why was this here? Had someone buried it in secret, hoping it would never be found? Or had it been lost, waiting for decades for someone like me to stumble upon it? And then the worst thought hit me. What if it was never supposed to be buried at all? What if someone had tried to send it and never got the chance? A cold shiver crawled down my spine. I needed answers, and I had a feeling I wasn't going to like what I found. My curiosity had already won. I knew I shouldn't have opened it. I knew this letter wasn't meant for me, but something about it, something about the way it was buried, hidden away for 50 years, made it impossible to ignore. And now, as I held it in my trembling hands, those words echoed in my head like a ghost's whisper. They're watching me. They know what we did. What did they do? And more terrifyingly, what happened to the person who wrote this? I looked around my backyard as if the answers would suddenly appear. The trees swayed gently in the breeze. The birds chirped overhead. The world went on as normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. I turned the letter over again, searching for something I might have missed. A date, a signature, anything. But there was nothing. Just a desperate warning from someone long gone. I needed to know more. I took a picture of the letter on my phone, careful not to damage the fragile paper any further. Then, I did what any sane person would do. I turned to the internet. Typing the name on the envelope into Google felt surreal. It wasn't a common name. In fact, I had never heard it before in my life. But maybe, just maybe, there would be a clue. The first few results were useless. Social media profiles, random mentions in old forums. Nothing concrete. But then I saw it. A newspaper archive. I clicked on it, my heart racing. It was an old article from 1975, and there it was, the same name. Missing person, Jane Whitmore. I inhaled sharply, my eyes darting across the page. The article was brief, just a few paragraphs. Jane Whitmore, 24, was last seen on the evening of September 18, 1975, leaving her workplace. Witnesses report seeing her enter her vehicle, but she never made it home. Authorities suspect foul play, but no arrests have been made. My blood turned to ice. She went missing, and now, decades later, her buried letter had just been unearthed by my dog. I sat back, exhaling a shaky breath. My mind reeled with questions. Was she ever found? Did anyone ever figure out what happened to her? I scrolled further, searching for follow-up reports. But there was nothing. No updates. No closure. She just vanished. I turned back to the letter, reading it again, this time with fresh eyes. They're watching me. They know what we did. I'm scared. Someone had been after her. She knew something dangerous. And then, my stomach twisted as I read the next part again. Don't trust him. You know who I mean. Whatever you do, don't let him find you. Who was he? Who was this person she feared so much that she had to write it down? And had he found her? I couldn't stop now. There was one more thing I needed to check, the address on the letter. I typed it into Google Maps, expecting maybe an old house, a business, something ordinary. But what came up made my blood run cold. It was an abandoned house. Not just abandoned, condemned. A small, run-down building on the outskirts of town. The photos on Google Street View showed boarded-up windows, a collapsing roof, vines overtaking the structure like nature itself was trying to erase it. I clenched my jaw. Had she lived there? Or had he? I had to see it for myself. The drive there was unsettling. The further I got from town, the quieter it became. No traffic, no people, just long stretches of empty road. When I finally pulled up to the house, I hesitated. It was worse in person. The air felt thick, heavy. The house sat there like a forgotten tomb, windows dark and lifeless. The front door was slightly ajar, creaking softly in the breeze. I swallowed hard. This was a terrible idea, but I was already here. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car. The ground was soft under my feet as I approached the door. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn around, but I pushed forward, placing my hand on the old wooden frame. The door groaned as it swung open. Inside, dust swirled in the dim light. The air was stale, carrying the scent of decay. Broken furniture was scattered across the floor, and the wallpaper peeled like dead skin. Then, my eyes landed on something that made my breath hitch. A table, and on it, a stack of old letters, just like the one Max had dug up. I approached slowly, my pulse hammering in my ears. The papers were yellowed with age, some torn, others neatly folded. I picked one up. The handwriting was the same. Jane's. I read the first letter, then the second, then the third, each one piecing together a story I wasn't sure I wanted to know. She wrote about a man who had been following her, watching her, a man she had once trusted but now feared. I don't know what he's capable of, but I know I can't stay here. He won't let me leave. If anything happens to me, know that it was him. I shivered. She had been trapped. And then, the final letter, dated the day before she disappeared. This is my last letter. I can't keep hiding. If you find this, I'm sorry. I felt sick. Had she tried to run? Had he caught her before she could escape? And worst of all, was he still out there? I stumbled back, nearly knocking over a chair. The room suddenly felt suffocating, the walls closing in. I had to get out. I turned, making my way toward the door. But then, a floorboard creaked. My breath hitched. I wasn't alone. For a moment, everything was silent. Then a shadow moved. I didn't wait to find out what it was. I bolted, sprinting to my car, my heart hammering against my ribs. As I sped away, one thought consumed my mind. Someone had buried that letter in my backyard. Someone had wanted it hidden, and I had just uncovered a secret that was never meant to see the light of day. Back at home, I locked every door and window, my hands still shaking. I stared at the letter on my table. What had I just stumbled into? I needed to know more. I needed to find out what happened to Jane. But one thing was clear. Whoever buried that letter might still be watching. And now, they knew I had found it. Determined, I decided to do some digging, both figuratively and literally. If Max had found this letter buried in my backyard, maybe there was more. I grabbed a small shovel and started searching the area. And then I hit something. Not another letter. Something hard. A box. Rusted. Old. Buried deep under the roots of a tree that must have grown over the years, hiding it from sight. My hand shook as I pried it open. Inside, wrapped in layers of cloth, was a stack of papers, old photographs, newspaper clippings, and another letter. I picked up the newspaper first. The headline sent chills down my spine. Local woman mysteriously disappears. 1975. I skimmed through the article. A woman, missing without a trace. No leads, no suspects. Just gone. My stomach twisted as I glanced back at the letter in my hands. Was this her letter? Had she been trying to warn someone before she vanished? Then I saw the name in the article. It matched the name on the envelope. This wasn't just an undelivered letter. This was a lost cry for help. I kept reading through the papers, each one revealing more about the mystery. Police reports, notes, even an old diary entry. There was something bigger at play here, something sinister. And the more I read, the more I realized whoever wrote this letter had been running from someone, and they never made it. The last letter in the box was different. It wasn't written by the woman. It was addressed to her. I warned you not to say anything. Now it's too late. No signature, no explanation, just those chilling words. My pulse pounded in my ears. My hands trembled as I set the letter down, my mind spinning with possibilities. What had this woman known? Who had she been running from? And why had they gone to such lengths to silence her? Max whimpered beside me, his ears pinned back as he stared at the box. Even he seemed to sense the weight of what I had just uncovered. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to steady myself. This was no longer just an old letter. This was a piece of a puzzle that had remained unsolved for nearly 50 years. I turned my attention back to the photographs. They were black and white, faded with time, but still clear enough to make out faces. One of them caught my attention immediately, a young woman, smiling brightly at the camera. I flipped it over, my breath hitching as I read the name scrawled on the back in faded ink. Eleanor Hayes, the same name from the newspaper article. I sifted through the other photographs. Most of them seemed ordinary. Eleanor at a picnic, Eleanor with a group of friends, Eleanor in front of a small house. But then, at the very bottom of the pile, I found one that made my blood run cold. It was Eleanor again, but this time, she wasn't smiling. She was looking over her shoulder, her expression tense, as if someone had called her name. The background was dark, almost unrecognizable, but I could make out the faint outline of trees and what looked like a dirt road. And behind her, just barely visible in the shadows, was a figure, a man. My stomach twisted into knots. Who was he? And why did Eleanor look so scared? I reached for the diary entry, my heart hammering as I flipped through the brittle pages. The handwriting was frantic, uneven, as if written in a rush. The last entry sent a shiver down my spine. He knows. He's watching me. I don't know how much time I have left. If anyone finds this, please, don't let him get away with it. My hands shook as I set the diary down. The weight of Eleanor's fear pressed against my chest like a physical force. She had known she was in danger, and yet no one had been able to save her. I stared at the box, at the pieces of her life that had been buried for decades. Someone had wanted the story to stay hidden. Someone had gone to great lengths to erase Eleanor Hayes from history. And yet, by some twist of fate, Max had unearthed her secrets. The thought sent a chill down my spine. What if someone was still watching? What if the person who had silenced Eleanor was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to make sure the truth never came to light? Max let out a low growl, his gaze fixed on something behind me. I stiffened, my breath catching in my throat. Slowly, I turned, my heart hammering in my chest. A figure stood at the edge of my yard, barely visible in the dim light of the evening, watching. My blood turned to ice. Had I just made the same mistake Eleanor had? I sat there, surrounded by the scattered letters, the brittle photographs, the yellowed news clippings that had once been hidden beneath my backyard. The world outside continued as if nothing had changed. The wind rustled the trees, birds chirped, distant cars hummed down the street. But everything had changed. This small patch of land, my backyard, so ordinary, so unremarkable, had been guarding a secret for nearly 50 years. A warning that was never received, a story that had never been told, a mystery that had never been solved. And now, I was holding the fragments of a life that had been erased. I turned the last letter over in my hands. The ink faded, but still legible. I warned you not to say anything. Now it's too late. The words were a whisper from the past, but they felt like a shout in the silence of my backyard. Who had written it? And more importantly, who was it meant for? Was it Jane's warning to someone she loved? Or was it from the very person she feared most? The one she had been running from? I could almost see her in my mind. A young woman in the 1970s, clutching a pen, her hands shaking as she wrote, knowing she was running out of time. I pictured her sealing the envelope, burying it in desperation, hoping, praying that someone would find it. But no one had. Not until now. I needed answers. I reached out to the local historical society. The next morning, they were hesitant at first, but after some persistence, they agreed to pull the records. Their response left me cold. The woman in your newspaper clipping, she was never found. No trace, no closure. Her name had faded into the archives. Just another missing person case in a long list of tragedies. The police had investigated, of course, briefly, but when leads ran dry, interest dwindled. Jane Whitmore became nothing more than an unsolved mystery. Until now. Now, her story was in my hands, and I couldn't ignore it. The weight of the truth. For the next several days, I hardly slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jane. The fear in her words, the urgency in her letter. Who was she running from? What had she uncovered that made her disappear? And most chilling of all, had someone gotten away with it? I found myself retracing her footsteps, visiting the places she had once known. The address on one of the documents led me to an old house on the outskirts of town. It was abandoned now, boarded up and forgotten. I stood outside the rusted gate, staring at the place where she had once lived. Had she known? Had she stood in this very spot, feeling the weight of something dark creeping closer? The deeper I dug, the more uneasy I became, because the name in Jane's diary, the name she had feared, it hadn't disappeared with her. It still existed. It was attached to a real person, a living person. And when I found him, sitting comfortably in his office, untouched by time, I knew Jane had been right to be afraid. Because he had won, he had erased her, and now he was watching me. That realization changed everything. Before, I had been obsessed with the mystery, the missing woman, the unanswered questions. But now, for the first time, I felt something else. Fear. I had uncovered something that was never meant to be found, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what that meant. I sat in my backyard that night, watching Max as he dug another hole. Just another game to him. But this time, I didn't feel amusement. Because what if he found something else? Another letter, another box, another piece of a story that should have stayed buried. Would I have the courage to keep going? Or would I do what Jane hadn't, walk away? I still don't know what happened to Jane Whitmore. I don't know if she ever made it out of town, or if she was silenced before she had the chance. And I don't know if the person who threatened her, the person she feared most, is still out there, watching, waiting, making sure that history doesn't repeat itself. But I do know one thing. Max didn't just dig up an old letter that day. He uncovered a secret that was never meant to see the light of day. And some secrets should stay buried. If you want more mysterious and emotional pet stories, subscribe now. You won't want to miss what's coming next.